Today's episode contains material that might be difficult or upsetting to hear about, and that may potentially trigger emotional or psychological reactions in individuals who have sensitivities. Listener discretion advised. Welcome, everyone. I'm Dana Peever, decision expert, author, speaker, and podcast host. You're listening to the Wildly Courageous Women podcast. More women than ever are faced with challenging decisions on a regular basis. I am so privileged to sit down with them to discuss exactly what they've gone through and how they've come out the other side, realizing their wildest dreams. I'm sure you'll be able to relate. And don't forget to stay to the end to take advantage of my latest free gift. Let's get started. Welcome to the Wildly Courageous Women podcast. I'm Dana Peever, decision expert, and as always, we're here talking about decisions that have been made in our lives that were courageous or impactful or changed the course of our life, or even one that we wish we could go back on. Today, I have Dana Artzer as my guest. Yes, another Dana. Dana is the owner and CEO of Arizona Insurance and Retirement Services. She's also the author of I've Got It Covered, the essential guide to closing the life of your loved one. Her goal in life is to be an inspirational speaker and share the good, the bad, and the ugly. Dana, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Dana. We have great names. It's great to be here.
Thank you. So before we get started, I want to remind our listeners that all my guests are asked what their most favorite app is on their phone at the end of my call, outside of social media. So you'll want to stay to the end to see what Dana has to say, because we sure get some great suggestions. And also you'll want to stay to the end to get access to my latest freebie. Okay, Dana, so we're going to take this step by step. I want you to set the stage for us as it relates to the decision that you've so graciously offered to share with us today. So get us started. Tell us about the background, how old you were, where you were living, were you in school, working? Set the stage for us.
Okay, well, I grew up in Buena Park, California, right across the street from Knott's Berry Farm. Had a great childhood, went over there every day, hung out. And my brother had an older brother, 4 years older than me, so his friends would always come and hang out at the house. And when I was 8 years old, I had such a crush on one of his friends, and I told his friend that I was going to marry him.
Okay.
When I got older. Of course, he laughed at me because I was 8 years old. So, they stayed friends all through high school, and I basically grew up with him, and my parents got divorced. So I moved away, and I hadn't seen him for a long time. And then I saw him again when I was 14 after my braces came off. Apparently he was a little impressed.
Oh.
So he actually, I know I was very young, but he did ask me out on a date, and we went out on a date when I was 14.
Okay. He was 18 at the time?
He was 18 at the time.
Okay.
Again, my mom, he was like family, so my mom had no problem with us going out. And the first night we went out, he said, "I think I love you." And I had no idea how to, I was over the moon because I'd loved this man or this boy since I was 8.
Right.
I didn't know what love was, but anyway, so that was a wonderful time for me. And my mom decided that she was going to move to Carlsbad, California, which meant I would either go with her, or what am I going to do? Where am I going to stay? So I made the decision to drop out of high school when I was 15. And Mike and I moved in together, and I started working. And that's kind of the first part of my story. That's going to get you to the rest. So I was very young, dropped out of school, was working full time, taking care of the house, doing all of these womanly duties, and I wasn't a woman.
At 15?
Yeah, at 15.
So how long did that part of your life last?
It lasted a while. We were together for quite a while. We actually got married when I was 21.
Wow.
We had a child at 22, my beautiful daughter, Ashley. And then we're divorced by 23.
My goodness.
Mhm.
I'm sorry to hear that about the divorce, but I'm sure there was a reason for that, that you made consciously together.
It wasn't really a conscious together decision. It was just based on, we were both so young, and he was involved in some things that I didn't want to be involved in, and I wasn't getting attention that I needed. And at that age, you don't know what you want, you don't know what you need. And it just came to where it just was not working. It just was not working. And finally one day, I got a call, and well, you know what happened. We got divorced. He's basically threw me out,
Wow.
had a trash bag full of clothes. I'm not gonna lie, in between that, again, I told you I was kind of craving attention. I found a guy that was giving me the attention that I was craving.
Right.
And I went to him, and we became very close friends. And I went and watched him bowl one day, and my husband had somebody follow me, and they found out. And anyway, that's what started the whole thing.
All right.
Um, Went home, had a bag of my clothes in a trash bag, and said, "Get out." And we had purchased a home.
Wow.
And I didn't know any better. I didn't know what my rights were. I had no job, I had no car, and I had no money.
Wow. And you find yourself out on the street essentially.
Thank God there was a neighbor of mine that lived around the corner that said I could come and stay with her so I could be close to my daughter.
So your
And
daughter stayed with your ex-husband?
stayed with my husband because I had no job. I had no place to go, and I had no car. I had no way to take care of her. And I didn't want to take her from her home,
Right.
from her security.
And all this by 23 years old. You're saying you were 23. Oof.
Yeah. Yep. So, I was staying around the corner, and I remember one day I went over. I needed to see my baby,
Mhm.
and I went to see her, and my husband's mother was there, and I knocked on the door. It was very strange having to knock on my own door,
Yes.
but she answered the door, and I said, I want to see Ashley. And my daughter came around the corner, and immediately she was scooped up by my husband's mom and said, "No, you can't see her." It set something off in me. I heard my daughter crying
Mm-hmm.
for me, and
Oof.
I couldn't see her. I couldn't get in the house, and the police were called, and I got in trouble, even though it was my house. So anyway, again, young, dumb, didn't know a thing.
Right.
So I'm devastated at this point, and I didn't know what to do or where to turn or whatever. So I'm a survivor. God has given me a spirit of survival, and He's been with me times that I didn't even know it, and I thank Him for that every day.
Right.
I went to work at a restaurant, and I ended up meeting this guy who was gaga over me, and he would come and visit me in a limo, would take me home in a limo, and I thought, pretty interesting. So went out with him, and in my thought process, all I was trying to think about is, how am I going to get my daughter back?
Right.
And so I thought, if I got married, I could regain custody of my daughter.
Makes
That's
sense to a
right.
degree without knowing all the other parameters. Yes.
I mean, my ex-husband, he was not married again. He lived alone. I thought, if I got married to a guy that is stable and has some money, we could have her come live with us. Everything would be great. And we got married in some garage that looked like a chapel. My mom was devastated. And we went to Ixtapa on our honeymoon.
Wow.
and he beat me up the first night we were in Ixtapa.
Whew.
So,
So I'm going to ask a few questions. How long had you known him at this point in time?
probably about 3 months.
Okay. And how old were you? Were you still 23 or were you?
I was probably 24 by then.
Okay. Whew. So you're away in a foreign country and you find yourself in this situation. What happens next?
I ended up, there was a guy, not a sexual guy, but just a guy that was very, very nice. I told him what had happened, and he actually, it was a Club Med.
Okay.
So they have their own rooms that they stay in, and there's a couple of them in the room. So they let me stay in their room that night. And I could hear my husband at the time screaming for me, up and down the hallway, screaming for me. I ended up, I found a way to stay away from him for the 4 days that we were there. But when it came time to go home, I had to be on the plane
Right.
next to him. So we got back to California, and I loved Mexico. I loved everything about it. Hence, you can see my background. That's just me. And things got pretty bad. We got in a really, really big fight. And to defend myself, I picked up a huge kitchen butcher knife, and I was ready to use it. And in that moment, I literally, I knew if he pushed me that far, my life was over. I dropped the knife. I took what he had for me. And when he was finished, I locked myself in the bedroom. He broke down the door and came in, and eventually took all of my jewelry that I had, took anything of value that I had, and he left. Even though it was his house, he left. And when I was in Mexico, I had met a lady named Sharon, and I can't remember her last name. She was a wonderful woman, and she lived across the street from Hugh Hefner.
Okay.
Okay. And she gave me her number, and she said, if you ever need anything, you call me. And I called her, and I told her what had happened, and she said, come on.
Wow.
So I got to her house, and she really did live across the street from Hugh Hefner, which is not really a house. It's more like a block.
I was going to say, isn't it like a campus almost?
Yeah, you can't even see anything. There's just a huge wall all the way around it. But I sat and talked with her, and I decided I didn't have anything to stay for. I didn't have anything to stay in California for. I couldn't get to my daughter.
Right.
I didn't want to be with this man anymore. I didn't have anything. And so I said, you know what? I want to go back to Mexico.
Wow.
So I bought a round trip ticket, open-ended. And when I got to the airport, I traded my one-way ticket, or my round trip ticket, for a one
leave that one be. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're exiting from your third serious relationship.
Exiting from my third serious relationship. Let me see. He ended up leaving. He went to San Antonio and was using some kind of fake ID and got a job somewhere. I never ever saw him again. I've
Okay.
never seen him again. So I'm now at this point, I'm still in Texas.
Okay.
I'm still working as a female exotic entertainer. Stripper,
Okay.
horrible word. But I guy came in, I saw him from across the room and I thought, oh, he's kind of cute. And I sat down with him after a little while and we got to talking and we just hit it off. And I went to go on stage to do a set. And when I got back to his table, I literally had like money because it was a big set. I had a bunch of money in my hand and I set it on the table and I said, I have to do one more song on this stage. I'll be right back. I just left all my money on this guy's table. I got back and all my money was faced, stacked.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it was gone.
Nope. It was faced and stacked in 5s, 10s, 1s, 20s. It was all there. There was a cocktail waiting at the table for me. And we started this friendship. I never danced for this man. He would come in every Friday. His name is Darby.
Okay.
And he would come in every Friday to see me. And we just had a really good friendship. He was married at the time. So there was no hanky panky, no nothing. Mm-hmm. His wife was a real bad alcoholic. Oof. And they ended up getting a divorce. And, once they got divorced, that's when he said, I'd like to take you out.
Okay.
So in between that time, I had made some other friends while I was working at the club. And one of them, his name was Michelle. He was from Holland.
Okay.
And he said, hey, you ever want to come visit me? Let me know. I didn't think anything else about it. So before Darby and I had gone out on our first date, Michelle had came in and he said, why don't you come to Holland? Just come and visit. Why not? I didn't have anything holding me back.
Right.
So I said, okay. So I sold a bunch of my stuff. I asked Darby if he would take care of my cat. And he said yes, graciously. I went out with Darby the night before I left for Holland.
Okay.
And I remember sitting in the bathtub the next morning, getting ready to leave. In my head, I'm thinking, what am I doing? Why am I going? Don't go. Oh. But I didn't listen to myself.
Okay.
So he took me to the airport and I got on the plane and I got to Holland and Michelle picked me up from the airport. Took me to his house. And I didn't think anything about it. But when he took me to his house, he took my passport and my money and he put it in his safe. So I'd been there for a day, and the second day he said, hey, let's go out and, we'll check out the town. And it was in a little town called Groningen, Gronigen.
Okay.
We're walking through the town and I noticed, you've heard of the red light district. I've heard of it. I've never seen it, but we're walking and I just noticed that there's ladies in windows and they're all telling him hi. And I just thought, oh, this guy's really popular. I had no idea where we were at. So the next day, he said that there was some important gentlemen from an oil company that were coming into town and that he wanted me to entertain them. I'm like, dance for them? What do you want me to do?
Right.
And he said, you do whatever they tell you to do.
Oh.
And I said, no, I'm not doing that. So this is the third man that beat me up. And I remember him telling me that he knew where my family lived. He knew where my mom lived.
Wow.
And he said he was really mad. He was really mad. And he said, you know what? He goes, when I get back, we're going ice skating, which I thought was totally bizarre out of the blue.
Yes.
And the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, he's going to put me in a hole. He's going to put me in the ice. So when he left, I had an action packer that I had taken with all my stuff in it. I threw all my clothes in the action packer. I still remember what I was wearing when I walked out the door. There was snow. I had on 4-inch high heel, thigh high, black suede boots, a pair of jeans, a red, white, and blue American shirt, and my Carlos and Charlie's jacket. And I'm literally walking through the town like I didn't even know where to go.
Right. And no passport and no money? That's still in the safe?
No money, no nothing.
Okay.
So I saw a travel agency, and I thought there has to be somebody that speaks English at a travel agency. And I went in, and I was hysterical at this point. And I said, I need to speak to somebody that talks English. And the manager took me back into his office, and I told him what was going on. They called my mom.
Wow.
My mom, by the grace of God, I left the address where I was going with Darby. And my mom had Darby's phone number, and my mom called Darby. So the third day, no, I'm sorry, hold on one second. No, I've skipped something. So before he said that he was going to take me ice skating, the day before that is when he told me that he knew where all of my family and everything lived.
Okay.
In the morning, we heard this commotion outside, and I looked out the window, and there was a bunch of police officers outside. I'm like, oh, what's going on? And next thing you know, I hear this boom, 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 like they're coming up the steps.
Okay.
Police came to the door, and they said that they had a report that there was someone being held here against their will. They came in, and they asked me point blank. And I said, no, I'm fine.
Oof. Oof. Because you were afraid for
he knew my family.
Right.
So again, it wasn't a good night that night. And that's the next day he said, I'm taking you ice skating.
Okay.
So that's when I left. Apparently there is a fund, or there used to be a fund for stupid people like me. I don't even know how Darby did it. Somehow he got a hold of a consulate, everything. Again, God was working, and I didn't even know it. They got me a ticket with no passport. They put me in the back of a station wagon. I literally, when you see people going incognito, I had a hat and glasses on. Wow. And I was laying down in the back of a like station wagon car. They drove me from Groningen to Amsterdam, and they left me at the Amsterdam airport. And I had to spend the night in the airport by myself.
Wow.
I didn't know if he was going to come find me. I hid underneath the ticket counter desk for the whole night. I got on the plane the next morning, and when the plane stopped in Charles de Gaulle, to let some more people on. And I'm sitting on the plane and I look up and who do I see but Michelle's really good friend. And I thought I was done for. I really did. And his name was Carl. And he looked at me and he's like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, what are you doing here? And he goes, I'm coming home from Algiers. He worked in Algiers for the oil fields.
Okay.
And I said, he goes, where were you? And I said, at Michelle's. And he's like, why were you at Michelle's? And I told him what happened. And come to find out, he was Russian mafia.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So I made it back to the States with Barbie's help. And when I flew back into Corpus Christi Airport, I got off the plane. And when I saw Darby, I mean, I looked like a wet, drowned rat. I was not pretty. But when I saw him, he scooped me up in his arms. He carried me all the way through the airport, put me in his truck, took me home, and I've never left. We've been married for 26 years.
Wow. My goodness. Thank goodness for Darby.
My hero.
I'll bet. I'll bet. Wow. What an emotional roller coaster. I'm just hearing it and you lived it. And, before we, started our conversation today, we talked about book writing. And I would read your story over and over if you were ever to decide to write that book. So I truly believe that you sharing, and it's not just one decision that you made during that time. You recounted probably hundreds of decisions that you made over the course of your journey. And I would love to be able to dive more into everything you experienced. I know we have a short time during this podcast, but what an incredible adventure, first of all, an adventure good and bad.
I would not be the woman that I am today. I would not have the success. I would not be the bad, that I am without all of that happening.
Absolutely.
I am fierce. I am blessed indeed in a million different ways. And I have an incredible relationship with my daughter. I also have another daughter by Darby.
Oh, wow.
So I also have a stepson as well. So, my daughter and I are, my daughters and my stepson and I were all extremely close, and all is well. All is well.
I'm so glad to hear that, because you certainly went through a lot to get to where you are now. So I'm thankful that you have a relationship with your daughter, because those must have been tough years for you not being in her life.
Her as well. She went through a lot. I mean, the stuff that she went through when I was not around is almost hellacious as my story. And so, a lot of bad decisions on my end were made that trickled into her life. But again, I tell her, you're your mother's daughter. You're a survivor, and that's all there is to it.
Wow. Well, and maybe she should be writing a book as well.
You never know.
You never know. Never know. Well, Dana, thank you so much for that story. Like I say, I can't even imagine half of that, let alone everything that you've been through. So I'm so happy to see, how fierce and successful you are now. And thank you so much for that story, for sure. Dana, I mentioned at the front that we were going to ask you what your favorite app is on your phone, and that's outside of social media. And it can't be the Decision Smith app, because I know it's everybody's favorite. So we'll just put that aside and then look at what it is on your phone that you spend a lot of time on.
Hello.
Hello?
Hallow, Hallo. Wait,
Okay.
I didn't make sure I spell it right. So if I'm gonna plug it, I better spell it right.
And what's that app used for?
Hallow is used for prayer, for inspiration, God's daily messages.
Wonderful. And it's something that pops up with a notification daily, or do you go into it?
Either or. I do get notifications daily, but if there's something in particular that I need to pray about, or something, if I need to pray for somebody else or something like that, then I'll utilize Hallow.
Okay. What color is the icon for that?
It's purple. It's got a purple, it looks like that,
Okay.
like a little angel thing.
Ah, sweet.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, Dana, I want to thank you so much for sharing your time and your stories with me today. And to all of our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. If you're ready to realize your wildest dreams, come and join us in the Wildly Courageous Women Facebook group, where we're changing people's lives one brave decision at a time. I am Dana Peever. Until next time, make great decisions and do life fun. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Wildly Courageous Women. Keep listening to hear more stories of these incredible women realizing their wildest dreams. If you have a story to tell about a decision that you've made that has impacted your life, I'd love to feature you as a guest. Please get in touch, and don't forget to grab my latest gift by clicking below. I'm Dana Peever. As always, make great decisions and do life fun.